work, and sometimes we just don't have a very good turnout, but today we have a very good turnout, so we're very, very pleased. We will vote next Wednesday at our regular council meeting, and you will be informed by Amy whether or not you were accepted. So, let's start. The first is Board of Zoning Appeals, and that's Jonna Burton. Okay, if you just tell us, Jonna, your name, your address, and your reason for wanting to be on the board.
Sure. Jonna Burton, 216 Linden, Kent. City staff actually asked me if I would reapply. We've had some pretty significant turnover on zoning, and so they asked if I would come back and serve for several months, kind of in an interim role, just to help provide some, I don't know, perspective to the new board members.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Jonna? Heidi?
Yeah. When you say interim, is this a full? Is this position for a full term?
It is, but I'd already let city staff know. I'm starting a doctorate in the summer, so I won't be able to continue the board position beyond that.
Mm-hmm. So we'll have to fill it again, but since we have no other applicants, I think that would be a good idea to have consistency.
We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mike?
Go ahead. No. How long have you been on it?
10 years.
10 years. Oh, geez.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Thank you.
And Roger?
Yeah, and so John, is there anything in significance of what you've learned or as you've gone through that process?
Absolutely. I don't think you can go through that process in that many of different types of cases, right?
Yeah.
Different types of properties, different types of uses. I know we've had deliberations around kind of homeowners' rights versus kind of the community, right? The better interest of the greater good. So having conversations around that, all the way to things like public safety when we're considering signage and lighting, especially in pedestrian-heavy parts of the community. So there's been a whole lot of learning. And I think one of my favorite parts, and I would encourage anyone else who hasn't to apply, because even just the parts of town that we go and visit, right, for the cases, they're neighborhoods that I've otherwise never had opportunity in 25, 30 years here to visit. And so you just start to feel like you know the community that much better too, which is really awesome.
Very good. Thank you.
Further questions? Jonna, thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
The next committee is the Board of Building Appeals, and Greg Seifert. Greg here?
Yeah.
Okay. Greg, your name and address and the reason you're applying.
Yes, Greg Seifert, 3390 Verner Road. Actually, I'm one of those dual citizen people, which is why I can serve on this board. I'm actually a resident of Stowe, but this is the only board that allows a non-resident to be on it, and I'm an architect. I've got over 30 years of experience. This will be an additional term. I think I've done this for, I looked this morning, for 10 years. This will be going into my 10th year now. So we meet so infrequently. The city building department does a really good job of making sure that disputes on the building code get handled before they end up at our board. But when we do get to meet, we work through the process.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Seifert?
You already answered mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I've done this before.
Yeah. You've been here before.
And by the way, I did hear a rumor last time I think I was in for a meeting that council might have been considering opening other boards to non-resident members, and if that is something that has been considered, I'd strongly be interested in joining other boards because I enjoy what I do. I work in the planning and zoning side of things too, so I'm very familiar with zoning and zoning appeals, and I'm usually the guy on this end of the table making presentations to those boards. So just put that little bug in your ears.
Thank you, Mr. Seifert. I appreciate it. No, Heidi, I'm sorry.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
So have you considered moving to Kent? It's a great city.
Well, I came to Kent from upstate New York to go to school here, so I do really kind of consider Kent kind of like my ancestral home, so to speak. I've been here since the early 80s. Haven't moved very far away, probably the closest from all of my classmates to the actual campus. So, like I said, I kind of like a dual citizen. I do sit on the Board of Zoning and Building Appeals at in the city of Stowe, so I do this same job, and then a little bit more in Stowe. So,
Okay.
Wow, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seifert.
thank you.
The next one is Board of Health. Emily Mattern is unable to attend. She is a nurse at the Cleveland Clinic and was unable to get time off. The next applicant, and by the way, there are 2 vacancies, not 1 vacancy. So there are 2 vacancies. Yes.
So, yeah, Emily is currently on the board.
She is currently
Okay.
on the board.
So she's
She's the president of the board.
Right.
Yes.
I want to make sure our audience knew that.
Yes, and so she's unable to attend, but there are actually 2 vacancies. One of our members resigned today, so we actually have 2 openings. And the second one to interview is Dr. Evan Howe.
Thank you. Name is Evan Howe, address 407 Wilson Avenue, just down the street behind Taco Bell. I'm a new resident of the city of Kent, moved here in the spring. Previously I was living up in Ashtabula County, and currently I'm employed as a family physician teaching in the residency program at Akron City Hospital. And in my former life was working up in Ashtabula County with the coroner's office doing deputy coroner work. Really enjoyed that interface of healthcare and sort of the government side of things and where those come together. And back in my days at Case, had studied public health, have really been looking for an opportunity to put some of that, taking the clinical work into the larger community and into practice. So would very much enjoy an opportunity to serve the city in that capacity and sort of integrating all those experiences.
Questions? Heidi?
So do you serve actually in public health right now? I wasn't able to catch that.
I do not, I guess. I don't serve with any current boards of public health. No.
But you have a master's of
I do have a
public health.
master's of public
That-
health, correct.
Yeah, and an interest.
And an interest, exactly. And then I did the PhD in health services research, looking at the implementation. My area of interest was the homeless population up in Cleveland, and so I worked with them and how they were able to access healthcare services and promote their own health through the soup kitchens and drop-in centers up in Cleveland.
So you understand the issues of the determinants of health?
That's really been where I've tried to put as much of my energy as I can, yeah, absolutely.
Important work. Thank you.
Further questions? No? Oh, Gwen?
Just quickly, with your previous experience that you brought up about working with the homeless populations, is that something that you'd like to continue? Is that interest still present?
It's
or
very
is
much a
it-
population of interest for me. My current job over at the residency program, we've kind of played around with ways that I can take that into the teaching area there at the residency program. But certainly here within this community, looking at the homeless population, certainly, I did a lot of street outreach when I was up in Cleveland, so tossing on the backpack and walking through the valleys. And I know on my morning run up along the river here, I certainly see a handful of campsites as well, and that kind of perks that attention and brings back that passion that I had for that population as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Further questions? Thank you, Dr. Howe. Appreciate it. Okay, the next committee, Community Reinvestment, Reinvestment Housing Council, and Audrey Kessler. Yes. Audrey, your address, please, and the reason that you want to be on this board. That's okay.
That's fine. Probably go this way. I'm Audrey Kessler at 1638 South Lincoln Street. I'm currently on the board, and I would like to continue on it to help oversee the businesses that are part of the, especially the CRA2, that have to meet particular criteria to continue getting their tax abatements. I think it's a good thing to have the citizen input on the way, because these are tax monies from the city, and I think the people should have some kind of input on how those are used and that they're used well and appropriately.
Roger.
Audrey, what are some of the challenges that the council has faced over the last few years, would you say?
There's only one I can think of, and I don't know that you really call it a challenge, but I know when the John Joseph Toyota was a part of that, and they got hit a lot with the, or I guess, economic issues that were happening at the time, and they were having trouble meeting some of their criteria that they were supposed to meet. But we believe that they were doing a good faith effort to trying to meet those, and so we kept them on, and they were able to complete what they needed to do.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody? Mike?
How often do you meet with this?
Once a year.
Once a year? Just once a year? I was wondering, because I know some of these committees only meet when they're needed. I was just curious how many times.
Yeah, we meet once a year. We have to go, we get the list of the properties, and we're supposed to drive by and see how they, basically just how they look on the outside to see they're keeping things up.
Okay.
So it's not really a time-intensive position.
Are you available to make that commitment?
I'll try.
Would you be interested in any other position?
Actually, I would, but I can't be on more than one at a time, I'm told.
That's true.
Which is why I gave up the Shade Tree Commission to stay on this.
I remember.
Because I was on that for 26 years.
Many years, right.
Thank you, Audrey. Appreciate it. Okay, the next committee is Design and Preservation Committee, and the first person is William Dunick. William, your address, please.
Yes. My name is William Dunick, and I'm at 1307 Sunset Way Boulevard, Kent, Ohio. I've been on the committee for the last 3 years, and I've enjoyed participating. My background is I was in manufacturing management for 40 years, and I retired 10 years ago, and I'm a volunteer at Hale Farm and Village as their preservation carpenter and do all their historical preservation on their homes over there. I just enjoyed being part of this community. I've been here for 25 years. I moved here 25 years ago. I went to the university back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and came back. So here I am.
Great. Questions?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Well, I do. I'm going to ask, since you've been on it, what challenges do you feel that the committee has been met with?
The committee, it's been interesting because they presented us with several areas of interest, and I guess the last one that we worked on was the South City Historical District.
South End.
And South End, I guess it's called. And it was interesting to me to know about the history of the city and how it evolved and what that area of the city really started as. And I guess that was just more of an interest to me in learning about Kent more than anything. I can't think of any really difficult challenges. I mean, we meet and we discuss it and we kind of put our signature on whatever is needed to approve what's necessary. And I do love the volunteer. I do love the city, and I would be interested in other committees. So.
What, do you hear that? Are you recording that?
Yes. Oh, it's recorded.
Heidi?
Yeah. Do you have any opinions on buildings in Kent that should be preserved or are not being preserved very well?
Oh wow, that's a difficult question. There's a lot of buildings here. I guess I'm more of 19th century history. Because that's what I'm kind of focused in on in my work. So anything in that era, I would be interested in preserving 19th century buildings or the beginning of the city back in the founding, Franklin Mills, as it was called, back in those days.
Yep. Yeah, I'm the president of the Kent Historical Society, and I know that we are introducing some, I think we all got letters talking about the necessity of preservation and looking and examining what buildings might be worth preserving or should be preserved, and I'm sure you're up to that task, so I appreciate you volunteering to be on this committee.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. The second applicant for Design and Preservation Committee, Joseph Tokarski. Not here? Okay. Fair Housing Board. Jennifer Nichols and Laura Stevens were unable to attend, and the third candidate is Susan Roxborough.
Susan Roxborough, 714 Avondale Street.
So Susan, why are you interested in this committee?
I've been on the Fair Housing Board before. I think I'm not sure of the exact years, but I think I served 2 terms, and I was on the Board of Health for 11 years. Which through some accident of counting, I ended up exceeding the 10-year limit.
Right.
So.
I remember I was on the board with you, so.
I know, how are you? It's good to see you.
Do we have any questions for Susan? Heidi?
I appreciate your dedication to the city.
Thanks, Heidi.
Is this the only committee you have an interest in at this time?
I also applied for is it called the Architectural Review Board? Do I have that name exactly right? And I saw that it was you're not currently looking for membership. That's the other one I'm interested in. Okay. I think the Board of Health is pretty much set up right now, judging by the applicants.
It's moving along fine.
Okay. Any further questions? Gwen?
Just what is, I mean, obviously there's a couple of different, committees that you're interested in, so you've got a wide range of interests. Why these particular committees? What is it that's appealing to you about them?
Well, I'm a sociologist, so I'm interested in justice issues, and actually have done a little bit of work because I studied mental health and stress. Have done a little bit of work about the relationship between the housing literature and well-being. So that's one reason for being interested in the Fair Housing Board. The Architectural Board, I was more interested because I have an undergraduate degree and a minor in art history. So that's just another interest of mine. But the Fair Housing Board is related to just sociologists are interested in justice issues.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Susan. We appreciate it. The next board is the Income Tax Board of Review. There are 2 people, Denise Moat, who could not attend, and the second candidate is here, and that's James Maddox. Name and address and reason why you want to be on the committee.
My name is Jim Maddox, 1227 Windward Lane. And I retired earlier this year, and I started thinking ways of how I might give something back to the community. I've been a long-term resident of Kent, grew up here, lived in surrounding communities for a short time, and then have been back here the last 15 years. So when I saw the position for the Income Tax Board of Review, I thought it might line up well with my qualification. I've got over 40 years of accounting, finance, and tax experience. And that tax experience goes back to my public accounting days, which I won't go how far back that was. But even in my position subsequent to public accounting, as controllers or assistant controllers for various companies, I prepare returns of all sorts, and individual income tax returns, employee and payroll tax returns, sales tax returns, et cetera. So I have a lot of experience when it comes to taxes and the filing of returns. Secondly, although I haven't been on a city board or commission in the past, throughout my career I've always served on a lot of committees that were involved with adhering to certain provisions. The most recent example I give you with my last employer, I was on the pension committee. And we had oversight for the defined benefit plan, the 401k plan, and the deferred comp plan, totaling about $500 million in assets. And what we had to do is make sure that the operations of those plans were in accordance with the plan provisions, and in addition, in compliance with any ERISA and IRS guidelines. So I felt that, again, although I don't have prior city board experience, I have a lot of committee experience. And lastly, you know, just being a long-term resident of Kent, again, I want to give back to the community.
Heidi?
Yeah, well, thank you for applying. It sounds like you're really, really well qualified. The only thing that, and I may be misconstruing the purpose of this committee, but the only thing I'm curious about is could you also be empathetic to the taxpayers who are struggling, perhaps, with the tax issues? Or are you more rules-based, like, well, this is what we have to do, and
Well, I think a little bit of both. You know, sometimes you have to look at a case-by-case analysis. And my understanding, this income tax board would meet when necessary to hear any appeals by taxpayers, or perhaps consider amendments to the tax ordinance, that sort of thing. In hearing appeals, again, on some of these committees I worked on in the past, we had to work with employees in that case to determine whether or not they met certain eligibility, whether or not, in some cases, they were doing things on a timely basis, which, you know, if there was extenuating circumstances for, we could provide some leeway. I would think that there's always some of that with respect to some appeals from a taxpayer's perspective, so I would be open-minded on that.
thank you.
Further? Okay, thank you, Mr. Maddox, appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
The next committee is the Loan Review Board. There's no interview for that. So then we have Planning Commission, and the first applicant is, excuse me if I mispronounce the name, Alyssa Trevigno. Thank you.
You got to be an
It was years of
Italian.
teaching.
Mike and I knew how to
Yeah,
pronounce
I'm sure you
that.
did.
Oh, I would hope so. My name's Alyssa Trevigno. I live at 1000 Erin Drive. I am originally from Long Island, New York, and I came out here to go to Kent State University. I'm a graduate of Kent. I loved the area so much. I did move back to New York for a little while and was always just really called to come back here. I missed it. I loved it. So about a year and a half ago, my husband and I moved back. We bought our house on Erin Drive, and since then I've been saying that I'm very, very interested in becoming more active in the community. I moved out here in 2010, and at the time downtown Kent was very, very different from what it is now, and I've loved just seeing the development of the city and how things have changed, and I would really love to be a part of that going forward, because I think there's still so much more that can be done, and I think there's just so much potential to be, I think, already one of the best towns in the world, but even better.
Great, great. Heidi?
Yeah, well, thank you for applying. Sometimes Planning Commission can become a pressure cooker situation. I don't know if you've ever attended a meeting before, but, you know, we're going to have, you know, say a situation where there's landlords who want to do something versus the homeowners in the area that, you know, may not want another boarding house or whatever. How would you approach such a situation, and how do you feel, how do you do under stress?
So I was very, very fairly warned about that when I applied for this position. I currently am the director of the hiring and underwriting committee for my company that I work full-time for, and that is a very stressful position. I work for a hospital system, and there's a ton of back and forth that, you know, I don't think this surgeon should be hired, or I really do believe they should, and I get quite a bit of pushback, so I am used to very stressful situations. We have our weekly meetings where I have to present every doctor, nurse, APP, and I don't want to say ultimately the decision is mine, but I get two votes, so. Until we hire somebody new. But I do get a lot of emails, oh, Alyssa, you know, I know this person, they're a great provider. Well, also, they've had $4 million in lawsuits. And so I am very used to the stress and pressure of people trying to persuade me one way or the other, and people maybe not loving the final decision that I've come up with. I look at everything in my job from an insurance perspective, and I see if they're going to cause us trouble from an insurance perspective, we cannot take them no matter how great of a person they may be. And I do think that will apply here, that you may love the person, but if it's not in the best interest of the city, I may vote against it.
Yeah, I see that you have a BA in legal studies.
Yes.
Which could come in handy, because a lot of these could become legal issues.
Right.
And so that is part of one of the things that we would want people on this board to try to keep us out of lawsuits.
Oh, absolutely.
By following the rules.
We would appreciate that. Roger?
First of all, thank you for applying. It sounds like you have a busy job as it is. Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, the Architectural Review Board, all of these are independent boards that you've applied for. You applied for this particular one. And you have a specific set of guidelines, and you're following those guidelines, or you're trying to put the application of those guidelines as you assess. What do you think the relationship should be between that particular board, the Planning Commission, and the vision that City Council, the City Administration may have for the overall or the overarching? How do you balance that? And should there be?
Right, no, I definitely think there should be a balance, and I think everybody should respect the city council and their views, and I'm a big picture person, so I would hope to see the very big picture of what you all want to see going forward and development-wise, and I just want to be, hopefully, a liaison between the town and the council and go forward in the best way possible. So I hope I answered your question there.
Yeah, I just think that sometimes, as elected officials, we have to represent everyone in the community.
Right.
If we're really being true to what we are, and as we try to get an idea of what it may not say it in writing specifically, but in the end, we hear like the direction, the overall direction that our citizens, because they're the key, they're the ones running the whole show through us, and in many instances, the Planning Commission gets caught a little bit because they go off on their own little, path, rightly so, because they're independent, but then they get into difficulties too, and it gets to that legal question that Heidi brought up that, do you feel comfortable with that type of relationship in terms of?
I do. So a big thing that I know was an issue, well, fairly recent, was an issue putting a Starbucks across from campus, and I do know that was a very big issue, a lot of turnout for people not wanting the traffic back in their area, which is totally understandable, and clearly the Starbucks is there. So I do think
compromise, right?
Yes, and so I think compromise is key, and I appreciate the Starbucks being there, but I also completely understand, the concerns of all of the citizens and the people living in that neighborhood back there, and their worries. It does cause a lot of traffic. It's not bad. I think it's relatively decent, but I like to hear both sides of every story and make an educated decision from there.
Okay.
Michael?
Well, I know that the Planning Commission is probably one of the most busiest.
They are.
Of all the, and then, like he says, you've got guidelines you have to go. You have the time for that?
I do. My hours at work are 6 to 2:30. I never have clocked out at 2:30, but I just have my husband. We don't have children. We have really plenty of time to do everything, and I've been excited to become active in the community, so I can make time for a lot of things.
Well, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you very much for applying.
Thank you.
The next applicant is Derek Salustro.
Derek Salustro, 133 North Pearl Street. I came to Kent from Long Island as well.
Wow.
Oyster Bay, Long Island.
What are the chances?
I came to school here. I got degrees in archaeology, geography, geographic information systems. I've settled down roots. I'm about to have my first child, actually. I'm also GM and partial owner of North Water Brewing.
Oh.
Yeah. So for me, this is just a way in helping the community and the place that my daughter and my family's going to be living in. Planning committee, I think there should be more of a connection between the people that live here and an overall vision of what they want. And I think that's very important. And from my background, I studied health and crime and stuff like that. So as a new person to the committee, I think I would just be sitting back and studying and doing my best to give an informed opinion But I think it comes down to what people in this community want over anything else.
Very good. Questions? Heidi?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you the same question. Talk about your experience with balancing controversial topics, like if there's, the Planning Commission, you'll be bound to encounter that, where there's a property owner of some kind trying to start a new business, which you might be pretty sympathetic to, versus maybe the people in that area of the city that might be negatively impacted. And how could you navigate that?
I mean, there's compromise. I mean, not everybody's going to get what they want in this community. I mean, it's just how it is. In terms of whether it's right or wrong, you're bound by the law and what you're allowed to say no to and yes to. I feel like there's plenty of development in downtown that could be worked on first before spreading out to other people's neighborhoods, honestly, from my own personal opinion.
Yeah. Property law in Ohio is really strong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the issues on planning. You may have a lot of sympathy towards the residents, but you have to look at that law.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you're bound to it, so.
Thank you.
And I'm from working in downtown Kent for a while now in the service industry. I'm used to having people scream at me, and I can kind of brush it off. So, yeah.
So you're prepared, right?
I am.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Mike?
So you have all those degrees and you're brewing beer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I like it.
He likes you.
It's so Kent. It's so Kent.
I mean,
That's why you moved here, right?
you follow your passion. So,
Yes, you're right.
I've worked in Mexico on and off for a few years doing archaeology. I planned on going into health mapping, and then when COVID and quarantine happened, one of my neighbors is Don Sheldall,
Yep.
and he's like, "Hey, do you want to help run and brew beer?" And I said, "Sure."
Okay.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
You do.
Further
Thank you.
questions?
No, thanks.
No? Thank you so
All right,
much.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay, the next committee is Shade Tree Commission. John Belfiore.
My name's John Belfiore. I live at 1281 Sherry Drive. I'm a current member of the Shade Tree Commission, and, well, we've just recently had full membership, so we're beginning some projects. The tree giveaway program, which I'd like to continue to be a part of, and give more back to the community.
Gwen?
What's your favorite kind of tree and why?
I remember this.
For city planning, we'll say like tree lawn.
Tree
Yeah,
lawn,
for
yeah.
tree lawns or a urban.
Personally, I like redbud.
Redwood.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do too.
I really like willow trees, but as far as the urban environment, they're no good at all.
And why is it that you like the redbud?
They're a native tree, they're attractive, and what's going to be more of a issue in the future is going to be they're deer resistant.
Ah,
Thank you.
thanks. Further questions?
Maybe.
Yes. Go ahead.
Well, I know there's a balance between planting new and preserving older trees. And I've seen a lot of trees recently marked for, what do we call it, destruction or taking it down? Or, yeah. And some that were really sad for me. Where do you lean?
I am opposed to cutting down old trees when they're healthy. But trees are living things, and living things have life expectancies, and when trees start to go, they can become a hazard.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? No. Thank you, Mr. Belfiore.
Thank you.
Tom Kaipura?
Hello, everyone. Tom Capira, 236 Columbus Street, number 1. This has come up several times that I wanted to apply and I never did. One of the current commissioners reached out to me and told me about this vacancy, so I figured it was time to do it. I've been a public servant for most of my career, and I see this as another way of giving back or continuing the public service, I guess. I currently work at Summit Metro Parks as a forestry technician. I'm one of 2 arborists that do the tree work for the entire park district. So it's everything from the hands-on to looking at trees and assessing them for risk, making decisions on how do you mitigate that risk, whether it's removal or pruning or whatever else. Selecting suitable species of trees for urban areas. Determining ownership of trees for like border properties adjacent to park property. Dealing with the property owners. So a lot of interaction with the public, patrons, and taxpayers.
Good. Any questions? Roger?
Yeah, Tom, thanks for applying. It's interesting, you have a Bachelor of Business Administration, and yet, tell me how did that happen? How did you evolve?
Graduated in December '08, and it was kind of a rough time for going into the financial industry.
Okay.
So ended up going back to work at the university and kind of found my love for trees and tree work. So I wouldn't change a thing.
Very good.
Gwen?
I'm just going to ask you the same question about whether you have, I just want to make sure you're not going to say Zelkova or Bradford.
What's wrong with Zelkova?
Bradford pear. Which is the one that smells so awful? The Bradford pear.
Bradford pear is nasty.
Yeah,
it's
we don't
a nasty
need,
tree.
we,
Everything
we
about
don't
it is
need
nasty.
any more. Yeah, we don't need any more of them.
So clearly you don't love all trees, right?
No, no. I probably look at trees different than
It's a
most
strong
other people.
opinion. I know I'm throwing it out there, but when it comes to urban plantings and things like that, do you have a favorite tree and why?
I think we should have a mix of trees of sizes and sizes at maturity, like everything from large white oaks where they're appropriate to be planted, down to Zelkovas or not Zelkovas, red buds, stuff that's more manageable under like power lines and utilities, stuff that's not going to get to be 80 or 100 feet at maturity. Favorite tree, maybe a white oak. I really like oaks. I like Zelkovas, sorry.
That's okay.
American elms, if they're, it's kind of a risky one because who knows if they're really going to be resistant to Dutch elm disease. But I hope that answers the question.
No, it does. Thank you.
Mike?
I like
I'm sorry.
sycamore. Just saying.
How many trees have you planted on campus?
Probably about 600 or 700.
Oh,
A lot.
I was going to say, I worked with Tom a while ago, so I know him, so he's a good guy.
Thanks.
Okay. Heidi?
Yeah, I noticed that you talk about talking to the public, answering questions,
Yeah.
why trees need removal and things like that. And, people might have questions about that, but they also tend to have a lot of concerns about how the trees are trimmed. And I don't know if that would ever get to the committee or the commission, but is that something that you have concerns about yourself, when the electric company comes through
Right.
and people say it's a hack job?
I always say you got to kind of play the hand that you're dealt as far as pruning trees. They're long-lived, and there are many people that are stewards of them over the course of their life. So there are different reasons for pruning trees. Utility arborists are notorious for hack jobs. Their priority is to keep the lights on, and I think it goes back to like selecting a suitable species of tree under wires. So, like I said, you kind of got to play the hand that you're dealt, and sometimes you have to butcher a tree to keep it safe or to keep the lights on, and that's something that you just have to deal with.
Yeah.
My son is a graduate of Roosevelt's urban forestry program, and he planted a maple tree that I will never forgive him for in our front yard because it drops its leaves a week before it snows,
Right.
So it's, but thank you very much for applying.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
The next committee is the Sustainability Committee, and the first applicant is Judy Nelson.
Hi, Judy Nelson, 330 Whetstone Drive. And I've applied for the commission a second time, primarily because at this point in time, with Caramita under contract to do the climate action plan, and the intention of the university and the city to join forces in creating a position for a full-time person to be shared, I feel that now is the time that we're really going to move forward. I've continued to serve on the ad hoc, even though I wasn't on the commission since I went off in 2019. So I'm anxious to be able to assist as we get the climate action plan done and start to implement it. So,
Questions for Judy? Heidi?
Yeah, that was going to be actually my main question for you, whether you were, what your motivation was for, it says new applicant, but we know that you were really reapplying in a sense. You've been off for a few years.
yeah, 2019 I went off.
So what did you enjoy most when you were on the commission, and what would you say would be your strongest contribution?
And probably what I enjoyed the most was just the networking with all the different groups in the city who are working on these kinds of things. We did the green energy tour with the state group, where 3 years we did, in the clean transportation cruise in. So there was a lot of collaboration with Kent State and their sustainability office. And then also working on the ad hoc, the other KEC and other people who are on the ad hoc committee have continued those relationships. And moving forward, I think just I bring the knowledge of where we've been along the course of this process, and then also just my passion for the subject. Just this is really important. I think it's great that the city is doing this. I think it can be a huge benefit to our residents. You know, practical things that we can do to help them be more energy efficient. So. Okay.
Further questions? Thank you very much, Judy.
Okay,
appreciate
thank
it.
you.
The next applicant is Ian Norway. Not here? Okay. And the last applicant is Mary Starbuck.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Mary Starbuck, 301 Woodard Avenue in Kent. And I'm very interested in serving on the commission because of my passion, first of all, for the environment. I was trying to think back of when I first kind of had these feelings inside, and I think it goes back to the Nixon administration when I saw them I saw people shooting wolves from a helicopter. And I was so incensed, I wrote a letter to Nixon. I think I got a response. But anyway, I've been in Kent now for 4 years. I lived the last 3 decades or more in Akron, and was involved with the Sierra Club and helped get a Monarch way station started there. So I've been involved on the ground, digging in the dirt, and also did some work with children in the neighborhood of the Mustle Canal era store. And with this idea of trying to...
Your microphone just went out. She's got a backup.
I'll just keep talking.
But is it going to record?
Okay.
Is it going to record if she keeps talking?
No, we'll get her another one.
Hold
Get her
on.
now.
Okay.
There we go. Techies are tech, too.
Okay, thank you. Techies are good. So, and I guess I wanted to also, Judy said a lot of what I wanted to say. The timing is very, the fact that I've been here 4 years now and I've become an active member of KEC, the Kent Environmental Council, I'm under consideration to join that board, so I would definitely there'd be the connection there, although I do believe they're already involved on the commission. So that with Karamita coming on, there's already a lot of interest in the people, among people in Kent in this area, and I think it just can be built upon. So those are the main reasons.
Okay, Heidi?
Did you have an opportunity to talk with Karamita when they were here?
No, I didn't. I heard secondhand. And I read something online that was very broad-based, and I understand there's a report coming out in February.
Mm-hmm. And what specifically do you think you can bring to this commission?
Well, I'm a good communicator. I think in group settings and discussions and such, I think I'd be an asset. I'm comfortable speaking, to the public, so to speak, but also one-on-one. And I also, as I said, I have the passion. I love native plants and trees, too, so I was hoping everybody would be asked what their favorite tree is.
Okay, what's your favorite?
Well, white oak.
White oak,
So
okay.
mine's already been taken. But anyway, so anything else?
Any further questions? Thank you very much for applying.
Thank you.
As I said, we will be voting next Wednesday. You don't need to be here. You're more than welcome to come to our meetings. But Amy Wilkins will inform you of the council's decision.
Correct. Well, yeah, once there's a vote after next week's
Right.
meeting, then I'll notify everybody.
Right.
Yes.
So thank you again. Thank you for your willingness to serve your community, and that's an important thing. I really appreciate that. I know we all appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's real interesting. We have a cross-section of our community.
Yes.
I mean, it's wonderful. It's wonderful.
It's great.
A variety of voices. That's real critical for a healthy community. So I appreciate you guys coming out, too.
So thank you for coming, and you can leave. And we will stay for an
Very much. You
executive
have
session.
to stay.
I need a motion for an executive session.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those,
Roll
do
call.
roll call.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Stovey?
Yes.
Okay, we'll take about 5 minutes, and then we'll go into executive session.
Joan?